Welcome to week 3 of Grief and the Architecture of Belonging. Today we are moving out of self and we are moving into household. So in the 6 layers of belonging, it's self, household, friends and family, community, country, and belief. And we are in that second layer, moving into the environment of our life. So our household is anything that exists in it. That can be our pets, it can be our family members, it can be our roommates, anything that is co-regulating with us in our nervous system. And our home is a mirror. There are so many things that reflect our nervous system in our home, or the mirrors of the other members in our house. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm Annie Emprima. I'm a metaphysical trauma researcher, which means that I look at trauma outside of traditional institutional walls of research. I look at it from very organic but unconventional, independent research approaches to find answers that other people can't see. And I'm here with my co-host. So Suzanne, if you can introduce yourself.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much for coming back to join us again. If you've been here before, if you haven't, go find the recordings and catch up. I'm Suzanne Jabour. I'm a grief guide and educator, and I come to this work after the death of my son, Ben. He died in September of 2020. So just over 5 years now, which seems unbelievable. The construct of time is a thing. And his death created the kind of rupture I think that we're going to talk about today in the household that so many people experience, because he still lived here. So he lived with me still when he died. He was 22. And so his stuff was all here and he was all here, and he had chosen this apartment with me and decorated it with me. So he's still very, very present in our physical space, which we really love, but we've had to find that balance of like, are we keeping this thing, because it was his, or are we keeping it because it's also ours? And so that's part of what we're going to talk about today is, how does that person then become reflected in your home? How does that loss impact the people in the home? So for me and my daughter, I'm going to talk about later how that really impacted our relationship. And really shifts the dynamic of the family, obviously, when someone is no longer part of the family. Anyway, we're going to start, as we always do, with a grounding exercise, because we do really want to also be focusing on how do we create and practice and remember the tools and the skills that help our nervous system re-regulate itself. And so because this loss at the household level does become environmental, right? Our home is both a mirror of our reality and, for many of us, the repository of the stuff that people left behind. We wanted to do something sensory today. So we're not going to do a breathing exercise, though I would encourage you as we do this to sort of consciously slow your breathing, especially if you're only breathing in your upper chest, as so many of us are doing right now in this time of sort of tension and crisis and chaos. A lot of us are just breathing right up here, and our bodies need us to breathe all the way down. So when we slow our breath, it does that automatically. Our bodies are so smart when we let them be. So if you consciously choose to slow your breath, we're going to do a sensory exercise to really help our nervous system also remember that our environment actually is safe. It's just an indicator. It's just giving us clues. And when we use all of our senses, then we get to see those clues a different way. We're going to count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I'm going to give you a different sense to use to find 5 things or 4 things or 3 things or 2 things or 1 thing. And I'll give you some suggestions about how you can use those senses and maybe expand them a little bit from the obvious and the sort of rote ways that we often use them. All right, here we go. So as you drop your attention into your body, we're going to first use our sense of sight. And I want you to look around you and find 5 things that you can see. And you're going to name them as you go. So you're very specifically looking at 5 individual things. I'm going to give you a minute to do that. And I encourage you to both look in the near, the middle, and the far distance. So what's near you, what's a little bit further away, pick one thing that's as far as you can see. When you have those, we're going to move on to four things you can touch. So that might be pieces of your clothing. It might be the upholstery on the furniture you're sitting on. It might be the carpet through your feet. It doesn't just have to be with your hands either. It might just be embracing that sense of your back touching the chair.
Mm.
Anything you can touch, find four of those. Then we're going to listen. Three things you can hear. And again, if you can think near, middle, far, try and find something far away. Really hone in on listening a different way and find three of those. And two is things you can smell. So, smelling the room around you is a smell you probably don't even smell anymore. You can smell your hands, smell your clothes. If you've got something beautiful smelling near you, a candle or an essential oil or a flower, smell that. Mine too. And then one thing you can taste. So, if you have a cup of tea, coffee, water, you can use that. You can taste your own saliva, something you can taste. And we'll just take one more big, slow breath with a good, energetic release. And just feel how we hope, I always find this anyway, your nervous system has calmed. Your body feels more aligned and relaxed. And when I do this exercise with people who are in acute grief, so in those earliest days, we're having to remember which one is five and which one is four and which one is three. I have two different ways people use it. So if that felt overwhelming for you to remember, you can pick five of whatever sense is most present, four of the next one, three of the one after that. It doesn't really matter. It's not critical what order they go in. Or you can just do one of each. Anything intentional that reconnects you to your body and reminds your body that your environment is safe will help to regulate your nervous system. So don't let yourself hit perfectionist place where you're trying to get it exactly right. It's more important that you do your version of it. So as we talk about how loss and grief impacts a house, I would love, Annie, for you to tell me the story you shared about the house that you walked into and how you could really see how grief was so present still and so mirrored by that home. Will you share that story with us?
Yeah, of course. And it's a story that's in my upcoming book because it was such an extreme example that it was hard not to see it as an outsider, but as an insider, we so very often don't even see our own reflection of our nervous system. So I was dating someone and we had gone on quite a few dates at restaurants, but this was the first time at his home. And I walked in and in the front room there were these pictures, smaller pictures of a young girl. And I thought maybe a niece or a, a, a friend's child, something that was dear to him, maybe a goddaughter or something. And so I inquired about the daughter, and he said, "Oh, that's my deceased daughter. She's been gone for 10 years now." And I was like, "Oh, like that's kind of a surprise, like a conversation that didn't come up in all the time that we've gone out." And so as I toured his home and he was showing me his home, there were things that just really stood out that my subconscious picked up on, my nervous system picked up on before my mind really
Mm.
processed what I was seeing. One of them was that there was no kitchen table. There's no place to break bread and commune. There was only four seats in the living room, two kind of theater seats where there's the hard console in the center, and then another set. And so even when he was sitting with his son, they weren't sitting
Mm.
near each other. So even we ordered food, we ate at his house, and we're eating with food in our lap because there's no kitchen table and there's nowhere for us to share, even to rest the plates. And I thought this
Mm.
is kind of a awkward indication of grief. Like, stay away from me. I need to be dissociated. I need to be safe in my own comfort of the walls on the sides of my chair. And when I looked up to watch the TV, there was a very large portrait of his daughter. So every time he's watching TV, she's in the peripheral. And I thought, okay, that's a bit harsh, like sharp for someone grieving is the constant reminder of what's not here.
Mm-hmm.
And then through the tour, he took me up the stairs and it's split staircase. And his son, who's living, was about like 8.5 by 11 photos going up. But then we get to the where the split of the staircase turns to go up. At that landing is a big portrait of a deceased dog they had just lost.
Mm.
But like death was so much greater and separation was so defined that it was a reflection of all of the things he didn't have, no living plants. So it was like life didn't really exist in this home, even though two individuals lived there.
Mm-hmm.
It was very palpable not being a member of that household coming in and feeling it. And so I thought, okay, there's not really, when there's this much grief in a home, there's not much space also in the heart
Mm.
for a relationship. And so that was a big awakening uh, for me to understand how grief reflects. And that's when I really started paying attention to how our home mirrors what's going on in our hearts and our minds.
Yeah. That's such an amazing awareness because, I think in grief spaces, when I'm talking with people, either whether they're on the support side or the griever side, there's so much conversation about the stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's one aspect of it. Absolutely. Do you leave the room the same? When is the right time to get rid of the belongings? There is no, the right time is when it's right for you. But this is different than that. This is about memorializing over living in a way. It's not even over because maybe if you compared sort of the square footage, the flat square footage of the pictures, they might end up about even, but it's so separated.
very
So,
pronounced.
yeah, it's so interesting. When you were talking, I was thinking about what pictures I have around the house because we have lots of pictures of my son. We don't have any pictures of him by himself.
Yeah,
They're all pictures of him with family or mostly with my daughter. Um, because it's about how much he was a part of our community
yeah,
and our family and our memories. And so they're all pictures of really special moments we had together. They're not about, here is this presence that is unspoken, right? Which is like if you know someone well enough that they're coming to your home in a dating relationship, they should probably know that your daughter died 10 years ago. That should not be a shock as you come in the door.
yeah,
So it's that sense of like, we've put that aside and that's now this memorial thing, but it's not part of how we're living.
no,
And that is so interesting. That to me really is that goal that I talk about with grievers of integration. Like we want to integrate our loss. It becomes a part of us. It's not the only part of us. I'm not only a bereaved parent. It's one of the many identities I have. Um, and how we carry that while we live. Because
yeah,
my goal always is like, what is the biggest, richest life we can have with our losses?
yeah,
And that's so, it's so interesting to witness a space where those things have been truncated off, like it's been segmented. And we have this space here where we're also segmented, like even the living are segmented. I was thinking when you were talking about the chairs, I was thinking about last night watching the Olympics with my daughter because the skating was on. And we're on the same couch, like our feet are touching. We're all like fighting over the blanket. Whose blanket is whose? Who gets the dog? Like, where's the dog going to go? Like, we're so connected.
yeah,
It's so fascinating. And I think when we have that awareness that our house reflects, like I've been so aware lately how much my house is reflecting clutter
yeah,
and, chaos. And I'm like, oh, I don't want that to be my internal. And I know it must be because that's why it's on the external.
yeah,
And if I can fix some of the external, it also creates the space to then be able to get at the internal. Because when
yeah,
everything is chaos, then we just spin, right? So, so interesting. The other aspect of it that we wanted to make sure to cover is how, one of my passion points is how families grieve together
yeah,
more often don't. because we have so much judgment about how each other are doing it and feel like I'm not grieving the same way you are. You're grieving too much. You're grieving not enough. Why aren't you emotional? Why are you emotional? All of that. And I saw that difference playing out in real time with my daughter after my son died. She was living with us too. She was one of those COVID return home kids. Because I was like, they're closing the airports. You can either come home now or maybe not at all. We don't know for how long. So she came home. She was living across the country. So she was here when Ben died. And I realized very quickly that we were going to do this a different way. And that, in fact, we were actually grieving a different person in a way.
Oh, for sure.
Because my son and her brother are not the same person. They're in the same body, but the relationship and the history and the expectations are totally different from the two of us. So we're actually not really grieving the same person to us. And I chose, as a matter of survival, to grieve very openly and out loud and quite publicly and everywhere, because that was the only way I was going to be able to do it and survive. And she chose to be much more quiet and private, not necessarily with me, though sometimes with me too, but certainly in the way that she talked about it or shared about it with her friends and her support system. And I remember saying to her explicitly, we need to have a conversation about how I can see we're both doing this very differently. And that's completely okay. I'm choosing to do it this way. If something about that is disturbing to you, we need to have that conversation. And I can see that you're choosing to do it a different way. And my promise is that if anything about that is making me uncomfortable, we could have a conversation about that. But the goal was that we both deeply respect and allow that we need to do this a different way and to make that be okay.
The respect and the awareness to acknowledge that is powerful.
Yeah.
Because it is so true. Her relationship with her brother is not the same as the parent that gave birth to the child.
No.
And that's a great point that we don't talk a whole lot about, is that one individual wears many different hats. As you were saying, grief isn't the only identity that you have. We wear so many different hats, and some people have a very difficult time acknowledging that.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to take pause for a moment to really go a little bit deeper with this, because there's a lot of value in this conversation in how we, as a family members in a home, are processing different versions, different relationships, different memories, different metaphysically, there are aspects of us that exist outside of our body, like kind of networks or nervous systems that extend beyond. Different languages, different belief systems use different words, but we become entangled energetically. Mm-hmm. The tribal, the village connection. And when that is taken, and I think we mentioned this either in the previous week or the week prior, about you're losing a piece of yourself as a parent, as mm-hmm. a mom. And so can we go a little bit deeper in this?
Yeah, absolutely. And part of it is about us as a collective not being very grief literate.
Oh,
right? Because if we know that each time we grieve, like for me, each time I grieve, it's different.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't I expect that someone else's grief for the loss of the same human is going to be different than mine? But because we don't know enough about grief and all of the many, there's 8 billion of us, we're going to grieve differently every time. So there's, 100 billion ways to grieve, or exponentially more than that, because my mind doesn't really do math. It's probably in the trillions. But we want to feel connected. Yeah. And so we want to see a reflection of what we're doing. And when we don't, we assume disconnection instead of assuming that we can actually be deeply connected in the different way that we're doing it. And we can learn from each other's experience. And that's what happened with my daughter and I. she would watch me grieving out loud and being very public about it and then speaking and writing and, taking this, life path. And that's not what she chose.
Yeah.
And that's okay. If we can acknowledge that everybody's going to grieve differently and there is not a right or wrong way, then we can release that judgment. And the
Yeah.
interesting thing is the statistics around married parents who've experienced the death of a child, the divorce statistics are way above the norm,
Yeah.
skyrocketed above the norm.
Yeah.
And what they believe now is that that divorce rate is so high, not because the child died,
Yeah.
but because the couple could not find a way to grieve together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so you end up in judgment. One person is grieving too much. You're not grieving enough. Why are you doing it that way? No, why do you want to get rid of this stuff? I want to keep this stuff. And in our pain, in our intense pain, we don't necessarily have great communication skills, regulation skills, acceptance skills, respect skills. We don't have great any skills. We
Yeah.
just have pain.
Yeah.
And if we're not explicitly given permission for that to be different and for the different to be okay, as long as you respect that each person is doing it however they need to and not doing it in a way that is disrespectful of you and your needs or of the person who's gone, then we can actually grieve together, even when it's very different. My daughter was very private about her grief. She barely talked to her two best friends about it.
Yeah.
I wasn't concerned because I know she was talking enough about it that she was doing the hard work, but she was not out there being public about it. She wasn't crying in coffee shops and grocery stores and all the places I was crying. But that's what I needed to do to survive. She was doing what she needed to do to survive.
Yeah.
So if the goal, which it very clearly was for me as a mother, was for us to come out of this as a united pair, still deeply connected, still deeply respectful of each other, still really loving each other, I knew I was going to have to give her permission to do it her way.
Oh, yeah. And we are such unique formulas.
Yeah.
Our previous experiences, do we have prior grief? Is this now complex grief? Did we just stack some extra things on top of what we were already digesting? Do we understand how we process information? Because when we look at how children learn in elementary school, were they visual? Were they kinesthetic? Were they auditory? Because it's usually how we're going to process our emotions too.
Yeah.
I'm very kinesthetic. I have to feel and move through things in an action. I can't just talk about them. That doesn't, it has no value to me. I can't just look at videos about grief or see anything visual. That doesn't, I have to move through it in an action way. And so all of these variables add to this formula. So each one of us, there's no possible way that we're going to land on the same outcome on how this particular number equates to this way of processing grief. It's so unrealistic as a society.
Yeah. And I think even when you're very similar, my daughter and I are very similar. Like we will literally say that someone will ask a question and if we're both in the room, we'll give the exact same answer at the same time. It's quite hilarious. So it's not that we're super different people.
Yeah.
But in this circumstance, when you talk about all the things that are layered under how we might be grieving, her lived experience is not the same as mine.
No.
Right? Her, grief, I refer to it as the grief train. I just love that concept because it's so visual. We can understand it, right? Her grief train that pulled into the station with all the unprocessed pieces on it. I think we talked about that last time too. It's not the same as mine.
No.
Her way of dealing with emotions, not the same as mine. Though we do both really love a good tub of ice cream and a bag of salt and vinegar chips. But our healthy ways of processing emotion are very different. And I needed to talk about it. I 100% needed to verbal process. 100%.
Yeah.
I had to talk. I would talk to anybody who would listen. Honestly, I remember, oh, bless the heart of the people that I worked with. They were so amazing to me. And we were in a coffee shop one day. We were out doing it doesn't matter what we were doing. Anyway, a bunch of random people that I don't necessarily know very well were all in the coffee shop. And I was talking with one of the gentlemen who I'd worked with for years, but didn't know super well. And he was asking me about my car. And he was asking me, I had a Ford Explorer at the time. So it had the 2 rows of seats and then the fold down seats in the back that you could pop up to have a 3rd row of seats. and he was asking what I thought of that third row seats. And I burst into tears. So I'm in a coffee shop with a bunch of work colleagues having a one-on-one conversation with someone who I've known peripherally but don't know super well, and I'm crying.
Mhm.
And at this point, I was very used to that. Bless his heart, he was also able to not run screaming for the outdoors or somewhere else. But it just, for me, that third row of seats, which I rarely used because I had adult children at the time, the only time I ever used them, Ben was the one who sat back there.
Yeah.
So just the bringing up of that, like that's how openly and rawly and publicly I was grieving.
Yeah.
My daughter was not doing any version of that, right? And that's okay. But we don't understand that even the family dynamic. And I've been working with so many clients lately, especially women of a certain age, that are realizing they are stuck in their grief because they were raised to be polite and
Yeah.
quiet and not make a fuss and not be a bother. And so just that enculturation that we're bringing to our grief experience is going to be different for each of us.
Another variable in the math formula.
Right? Like there are so many variables to have any expectation that one family member might grieve like another family member or one friend might grieve like another friend. It really, when you break it down and think about it, makes no sense.
Yeah.
But in our pain, we want to feel seen and understood.
Mm.
And if your pain and my pain don't look the same, that means you don't understand me. That's the meaning we make of it, the
And it
false
can be
meaning.
interpreted. It can get interpreted as emotional neglect.
Yes.
You don't care about my feelings.
Yeah. Or you didn't care about the person we lost.
Right. Yeah. Right. So these
Yeah.
statements that come from what gets interpreted as emotional neglect because the bids for attention or the acts of I need this don't get met.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we don't need to, I can't say enough times, we don't need to meet them by acting and pretending to be like each other.
No, no,
We
no.
can meet them through an honest conversation about how you can see that something different is happening for each of you. And how are we together going to have a shared agreement about how we're going to navigate that and how we're going to, as best we can, as imperfect humans, try to stay out of judgment and blame and
Mm,
shame. Because if we can stay out of those, if we can stay out of there
mhm,
and stay in love,
mhm.
even though it's painful and I don't understand why on earth you're making that decision, it's okay.
I want to talk about men for a moment
Mhm.
because men are not given the same capacity to express emotions as women.
No.
And so there's this expectation of if I'm the man of the house, if I'm the leader, I have to stay strong. I have to be the man on the white knight in shining armor. And it's unrealistic.
Yeah.
And this belief usually comes from a father wound in childhood of you don't cry, suck it up,
Yeah. Rub some dirt in it.
rub some dirt in it.
Yep.
And what it ends up doing is it makes the expression of the emotion dysfunctional.
Mhm.
And so it builds up and builds up, but it's so complex now that it's so entangled with other emotions. Shame, right? Like crying in public as a guy. Whoa, that's shameful. We don't do that. So
Yeah.
then guys stuff it in and then it converts into anger. And it's such a mismatch expression when really what it is grief.
Yeah.
Grief. And that's a and then it affects the family dynamic and everything gets convoluted and entangled. And also when we're looking at emotions with anger is the shield to the soft grief.
Mhm.
When we're seeing this outrage, it's usually masking the grief behind it. Not always, but for a good portion, that anger is really grief. The
Yeah.
anger says, "Hey, I'm going to come in and I'm going to be the distraction so no one sees how you're hurting."
Yeah.
And so when we internalize that grief, we are probably also internalizing an element of anger or externalizing that anger. So I think we have to have this cultural shift of what that looks like for men so that men can have permission to express while still fulfilling their perceived duty
Mhm.
in the family dynamic.
Yeah. Yes. And to broaden that sort of understanding that strength doesn't look like You
Mhm.
just push through and pretend nothing happened.
Yeah, no, that's the opposite, quite
Strength for
honestly.
me was I'm crying in the coffee shop, but I'm still having a conversation about the third row of seats and whether I like them or not. And I'm explaining, oh, like I'm crying because, the only person that ever sat in that third row was Ben. And this was someone who knew Ben had died it was very short after he died. And then we just kept having a conversation about what I thought about the third row of seats, right? That to me is what strength looks like.
Hmm.
And if you're not comfortable enough or in safe enough spaces that you can be that open and public about it, that's okay. I'm not saying you have to do that. Please don't hear that. But we do need to find safe spaces where we can release and safe spaces where we can just be with what is real without facade, without whatever we think strong looks like.
And without worrying that it is going to be so grand that it is going to flood us and drown us. Because
Yeah.
that's the concern that I've heard with clients that have chronic PTSD and chronic grief. They
Mhm.
feel like when they go to open that valve, it is going to flood in so fast, they're going to get knocked over and drown in it.
Yeah.
And it very rarely is even anywhere near drowning capacity,
Yeah.
but it does require an enlightened witness to be the container to witness that grief and hold the space so that the person doesn't drown
Yeah.
when those emotions come through, that they don't get so flooded with emotion that they can't hold themselves up anymore. And
Yeah.
and that's a conversation we don't have either, is being able to express the emotion and having the container, having a
Mhm.
friend, a professional, or someone trained in holding space, the enlightened witness, to hold that container without flinching, because as we're witnessing, we have to witness with strength too.
Yeah.
If it makes me uncomfortable, if I know I've had conversations with clients where they test me to see if it makes me uncomfortable first, because they don't want to hurt me. They think they're going to drown me
Yes.
too. And
Yes.
not at all what happens. I can handle hard, but that's the perception of, I don't want to hurt you any more than I'm hurting me. And when we have that view, or the belief, because belief
Mhm.
system, right? Belief system is not just religion. Belief system is also the rules that we've created in our head, that internal dialogue from this extended psyche. When that voice comes in and it says you're going to hurt the people around you by expressing this,
Yeah.
then it just gets jammed up and it starts taking things down, like organs in our body and our lungs and asthmatic responses and fibromyalgia and all of these muscular skeletal responses, because it's so internalized.
Yeah.
And we don't need to have that. Like there are enlightened witnesses that can hold that space, that can be the container, that can help people process through. So um, for anyone that's listening, if this is how you felt, know that there are people who are meant to handle hard. And
Yeah.
I think two of them are here right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, it also can be so helpful. Yes, find someone that can help you if that's where you're at and you feel like, oh, if I let that floodgate out, I don't know what to do. It's okay to hear that and let your body tell you that it doesn't know, that it doesn't feel safe. But then you have to find those safe spaces where and it can be a really, really emotionally intelligent friend. I was very lucky. I had two or three really emotionally intelligent friends that were my safe spaces, and I could talk through anything. We walked and talked 1,000 miles, I swear. Um, but if that doesn't feel safe because you're being a bother or a downer or you don't want to burden them,
Yeah.
find a professional like Annie, like myself, that can help you. Because the other thing that our systems need is to learn
Yeah.
that we can allow those big emotions and not get overwhelmed.
Yeah.
But if your system still thinks that when you allow those big emotions, when you turn towards that grief, you're going to get overwhelmed, it is not yet safe to do that.
Yeah. It's a belief that has to shift just a little.
Yeah, right. We need to create sometimes some evidence that actually we could touch that and still be able to get out of it. We
Yeah.
need to practice. Sometimes it's a skill that we don't have because of how we were raised, what society told us, the messages we're still getting, right? All of those things. And
Mm.
none of those are your fault. They just are. So
Mhm.
if we can take the shame and blame out, then we can really start to learn and build new skills and new understanding and new ways of being. But as long as on top of feeling scared, we feel shame and blame, we're stuck. We're stuck. And the stuckness really comes, in my experience anyway, and I'd love to hear from your metaphysical trauma perspective. For me, inevitably, the stuckness in a griever, in grief, comes from the denial. I don't
Yeah.
know anybody actively grieving who feels stuck.
No.
It's
No.
that sense of, oh, I can't because it's too scary or it's too whatever. That's where we get stuck.
Or unworthiness. I'm not
Yes.
worthy enough to love again.
Yeah.
I'm not worthy enough to try again. I'm not worthy enough to heal myself. I'm not worthy enough to climb out of this grief well.
Yeah. And sometimes that comes back to shame and blame
Oh,
around the
sure.
person who died, right? I didn't do enough. I shoulda, coulda, woulda, whatever it is. That sometimes starts that spiral too of unworthiness. Like I had this amazing person and they're gone because I perceive that I must have done something wrong. And so then, therefore, I'm not worthy of another chance, which is all kinds of needing unpacking and healing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. It, it's especially when there was a codependency component
Mm,
because
yeah.
that addiction is gone now.
Yeah.
And how do you fill that? So the dynamics shift a little bit. And I mentioned, I think it was last week where I talked about my dad who, when after the divorce, that was his identity. Like it was dysfunctional from the beginning, but when my mother divorced my father, he got stuck in 1992. He never moved forward. His the clothes in the closet, and he passed away. It'll be 4 years ago this year. The clothes in the closet were still from 1992. Like time stopped. And I'm not, when I say that, I'm not exaggerating. Time stopped. Nothing in the room changed. In his bedroom, nothing came out of the closet. Time stopped. He would only buy cars that were from that decade. Even after
Oh,
cars
wow.
were dying, he would still go back and buy used cars. Time stopped
Yeah.
because he could not move forward. And that is one of the most unhealthiest things for a human being, is to be stuck in time,
Hmm.
or to be so anchored into the future like that we start romanticizing and fantasizing about a life that can never be met in the physical.
Yeah.
When I get out of this feeling, when I like I'm gonna do all of these things, like that's still escapism. It's still
Yeah.
dissociated from reality.
Yeah. And really, what we need is that sense of reality.
Yeah,
Even
like
when it's painful,
grounding.
even when it's horrible, even when reality is about despair and disappointment and pain, we need to stay grounded and in touch with reality.
Yeah. The power of healing, and so much healing happens in the present moment and so little healing happens outside of the present moment.
Yeah.
And so that sense of being grounded in time, no matter how uncomfortable, is one of the most important steps we take in grieving.
Hmm.
Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. So anyone in the audience, I know we've got members in the live episode, and then of course in the recordings. If you're listening to this on social media after, please add your comments into the chat. We will be actively monitoring this for at least a few months. I can't guarantee 5 years from now, but I can definitely guarantee in the next 90 days. And is there anything else you want to add, Suzanne? Did we miss anything that we wanted to cover?
I don't think so. I think we're good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah. I would. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
no, go.
I would just say, thank you for watching. Thank you for coming. Thank you for supporting this, passion project of ours. And next week, are you going to talk about next week? Next week we
I can
step,
talk about next week.
yeah, next week we step another step out from the self.
Yeah. Outside of household, the next layer is friends and family. And we're going to look at how those members that do not live with us in our household still help define who we are and how we process grief, and
Mhm.
how they add to our grief sometimes.
Yes.
That will be next week. For those that are in the live audience, stand by. After we close out, we will be able to address all your questions. And then for those that are following with the reflection questions, we do this every week. The reflection question, because we're looking at the home and we talked about the stories of the home, What room, object, or corner of your home holds a story of grief? And what does it reveal about what you need but didn't receive? So, is there something in your home, like I talked about the portraits of the deceased dog and the deceased daughter? Are there any items in your home or areas of your home that are still holding the past? And what is it that you need that you didn't get? So, if you're listening to this, put this in the comments. If you're on the live, we can talk about this after the recording. And I want to thank all of you for watching and stay tuned. We will see you next week. Take care, everyone.